My name is Logan Mantz, and I'm running for Hampshire County Commissioner. I finished law school in 2020 and came back home and immediately started trying to do as much public interest law as I could. I work with a bunch of nonprofits. I work with several small businesses, and I'm the municipal attorney for Romney and Cape and Bridge, and I've got one other municipality that I'm working with at the time. Like I said, I work with a bunch of local nonprofits, volunteering on several local projects, but it's about 40 to 50% of my workload is just community involvement projects here in the county. My family is awesome. My wife Justine, son Jordan, daughter Daisy. Got little kids that are going to go to school here, and that's actually the main reason that I'm running. I think that I'm a really good candidate for this position because I focused my education and my work life around solving the same kinds of problems that we will be solving at the county level. My opponent's a really good man, and I'm glad for the county that we get to choose between me and him for this. But I love the work. It's something that I want to continue to do the rest of my life, regardless of whether or not I'm in public office. I'm going to be working on community development projects for the community that I live in and am going to raise my family in. So if you have to boil it down, we need a plan. We need a plan for our community. The comprehensive plan process is something that we need to take very seriously because that's the mechanism by which we actually go out, talk to our citizens, figure out what's important to them, what they need to live and want to continue to live here, to raise their families, to start businesses. That process helps us establish the priorities that we're going to work through for the next 10 years. And we need to do that soon. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened since the last time we've ever thought about a plan. We have we have no plan in place to figure out how to deal with development pressure post-COVID. We have no plan for, as a community, how we're going to deal with the opioid crisis. There's just a lot of stuff that we need to think about really hard and build a good plan. So if you ask the top priority, it's planning, because that sets the rest of the priorities that we're going to work with. But apart from that, we need to think about, what this community is going to look like over the next 20, 30 years. I left for 15 years to do military in college, and when I came back, there were 3 new subdivisions on the road that I grew up in. And not that that's always a bad thing, but we need to really think and talk as a community about what do we want this place to look like for our kids. I know that I want my kids to be able to grow up in a community that resembles the one that I grew up in and that I fell in love with, that I still love. And I think we need to be deliberate in how we plan for that. And apart from that, there's tools in how we do that. We need to talk about economic development responsibly. We need to talk about the opioid crisis. We need to talk about working with our school system. And whatever we do, we need to figure out very deliberate steps to make sure that when we do things as a government, we do them in a way such that they have positive impacts on the people that live here. But the cool thing is that there's plans for how to do all this. There are steps that we can take, there's research that we can do, and we can do a lot of really good things if we do so deliberately. So I've met with the heads of all of our volunteer entities except for 2 I've still got to meet with. EMS is a little bit different than fire, but in very, very short, the very, very short answer to this is that we need to view all of our volunteer systems as part of our county system. We need to set a default at the county level says we're not going to lose another volunteer entity. Not because supporting them is just the right thing to do, it's because this is good resource management. When there is a local capacity for service, we need to value that and prop that up. If somebody starts floundering or if somebody starts struggling, we need as a county to say, okay, what can we do to make sure that that entity has the resources it needs to continue because it is doing part of our county level mission. That can be addressed at the top. You can start culturally and say, hey, you know what, from here on, we know that there's been issues in the past, but we're going to work together. We're going to prop up our volunteer entities, and that's including working with our folks at the paid service. The cool thing is that there's good folks that are working at the paid service too. My wife actually worked there for a little bit, and I think that a part of how we integrate them in with the system is we say, hey, for the paid service, we're going to make this the best place to work possible. You can't always do that through just a ton of pay, but you can do workforce accommodations. Everybody wants 24-hour shifts. Everybody wants a few things that is working at the paid service already. We can just make this a really good place to work, show them that they have support from the top, and build in that cooperation with the volunteer entities. And we can figure out these little rub points that have been an issue up until this point. And like I said, everything does have a workable solution. We just have to commit ourselves to good conversations. We don't want to say as a community, because we care about our rural atmosphere, we care about the way that things feel right here. We don't want to just come out of the gate and say, no matter what, all business development is good business development. We want to say, hey, what are the things that we should look at when we figure out who do we want to attract? When we talk about how to attract the right kinds of businesses, first you start with infrastructure, right? So we want to focus on those things that make it a good place to live, that make Hampshire County a good place to live and raise children. Because if we do those things, then we've actually solved a lot of the workforce questions that employers are going to look at whenever they try to figure out whether or not they want to locate here. So if we have strong schools, we have child care, if we have, the cool thing is Hampshire County's already doing really good on the infrastructure development for broadband. Roads are not our thing here at the county level, but we've already checked a lot of major blocks. If we can work on some of the workforce stuff, i.e. we're also taking care of the opioid issues, then we're going to make this a more attractive place for employers to want to come in and set up. And then once we've done that work, we need to set a set of criteria at the county for saying, okay, maybe we're not going to recruit in every single business, but when we do want to recruit businesses, what are the criteria that we're going to use to actually select those? I'm not going to pretend like I know every single criteria that we should use to evaluate, but S.J. Morris is the reason that I went to law school. I wanted to learn how to encourage businesses like S.J. Morris to move to Hampshire County. I studied business law. I got my MBA. I did that so that I could understand how do we replicate what S.J. Morris is for the community. So I think that we ought to look for businesses that are going to be owned locally, that are going to create value-added products, probably have some level of employees, like we can actually gauge by how big would be too big for us to work with here. And then just say, what are the criteria that we're going to set, that are going to make them a good fit for the community. But we can also talk to the employers and say, hey, this is our community. Are you guys okay with the way that we have things here? And if it's not a good fit, then that should be a natural conversation, an honest conversation that we have with them too, because we really want to find employers that are going to come in and join our community and be part of it. And that's not the full conversation. I think the full conversation happens at the Development Authority over the next few years, but I love the question for that reason. If there is a project that I think is going to have the highest impact on Hampshire County, I think I just wrote an article about encouraging child care facilities, encouraging the development of child care facilities here in the county. If I were to pick a project, it would probably be that. Not only because, hey, we need child care, we do need child care, because use of our old school buildings that are getting ready to become vacant is something that we're going to have to solve anyways. We don't want publicly owned facilities falling into a state of deterioration or becoming vacant. So that's something that we're going to have to deal with. We know that we want to encourage small business development, so having incubator space would be a really cool thing too, but we need childcare. And these facilities are already purpose-built for childcare as they were schools. So I think that if we can crack the code on how to repurpose these facilities, get some childcare, privately owned or privately operated childcare facilities in these public facilities, that would, I think, have more impact, positive impact on our community than any other project that I could come up with right now. Actually, the opioid crisis. So, I mean, it's you're going to have a toss up there between like, what are we doing to make sure that we don't have crazy overdevelopment and the opioid crisis. But the opioid crisis is costing lives, and it's costing lives of our kids. So if we're going to say, hey, there's something that needs our attention more than anything else, it's we have to figure out those things that we can do as a county and as a community, because it's not just the county government, to start addressing this, to make this a safe place to grow up, to go to our schools, to choose to live. There are lives that we can save by good, deliberate action, by coming up with good plans, and the impact, the positive impact that we can have on lives is absolutely immeasurable. If we can get our heads, around the problem set and start taking good steps, that's the most important thing that we can do right now. I think that this is actually an important discussion that we can have as a county, because the conversation has never happened. Right now, the county actually has 2 ordinances on its books, which are technically land use regulation ordinances. So cell tower siting, and then it's got a couple clauses in its subdivision ordinance, which do things that are land use regulation. I think that a lot of folks don't understand that there are a bunch of different ways that this can be approached. And I think that when folks hear land use regulation, they hear all of the things that it can be. So, think Euclidean zoning, you can't build your business here because it's adjoining a family farm here or something along those lines. I think that there are a ton of tools that are inappropriate for Hampshire County and will never go forward here. But there are probably a few tools that are good fits if we want to talk about them. For instance, if the folks in Hampshire County wanted an ordinance that did nothing but said, hey, this is where you can put, windmills or solar farms, and you have to put them so far back from a main road. We could have an ordinance that did nothing but that. But that's a conversation that I think that we should be able to have as a county. Personally, I will never support any land use regulation unless it is put on the ballot and then passed at a 60% rate, because it should not be my decision. If we have good conversations and then there are tools that the county and the people of the county want to use, I'm happy to have the conversations. And then, like I said, if 60% of the folks want it, I'll support it. But that's the process by which I would be comfortable even talking about it. The thing that I loved the most about it was the way that it felt growing up here. We still have the small town feel. We still have the sense of community. We still have this, the neighbor, the neighbor's family. You can, like when you go and you talk to somebody, they'll tell you things about your great grandparents. They'll tell you, things about your uncle, and then some embarrassing story. The ability to have a community that's still close and tight and then feels that way is something that I wouldn't trade for anything. And if we became, it's hard to say if we want to be known for that, because then we'll be too popular, but it's not a bad thing to be known for, to be a really good small town and a really good tight-knit community. And that would probably be one that I'd put at the top of the list. I speak Russian, so I think a lot of folks probably don't know that. Regardless of whether or not I get elected, I hope that all of our voters can take the issues that are going to be, decided between now and over the next 10 years as a county seriously, because, our public issues are high impact. Have good conversations. And I hope that our voters and our entire population can remember that we're all one community. Cooperation is the thing that will get us through all of these hard to solve issues. We are still too small and too poor not to work together. And I hope that as a community, we can say, we're going to put aside any differences that we have in the past and work together. And if we can do that, there's nothing that I would bet against us as a community on.